Welcome to Power Talks with Santosha. Today we have with us Mr. Sujit Mundul, the CEO and Director of Standard Chartered Bank, Nepal. Although the global economic crisis is being discussed worldwide by universities, media and business houses, the global economic crisis is still an issue that needs further discussion. Mr. Mundul, during the first season of Power Talks, we have discussed this economic crisis extensively. Yet we would like to hear from you the inside story behind this global meltdown.
The global meltdown and the crisis has been well talked about for the last quite a few months. We have seen how the hypes in the economies, particularly in the Western economies, can go up to a level which is unmeasurable, forgetting that there is an economic cycle. And things were all hunky-dory, the stock exchanges were doing great, all scripts were doing great. People totally became oblivious that there could be a downturn. And I believe, and what has been proved by many researchers and many statistics coming out from governments, from banks, from institutions, clearly show that there was lack of supervision at the governmental level, at the regulators level, and also bad lending, like subprime is a case in point. And it's sheer greed which had forced the large economies like US and other Western economies, who virtually control the whole global economy to a great extent, And so this meltdown has happened. So the basis of this meltdown, this crisis and subsequent recession, if you go into the deeper analysis, you will see that there was a hype initially, there was lack of control at the governmental level, and there was bad lending. So to my mind, these are the root causes of this global meltdown, particularly in the Western economies, and US in particular.
In November, the US elections result was announced where Obama was a clear victor. Has that any way a connection with the economic crisis?
Well, it has to some extent influenced, and people had a lot of expectation, very naturally, that the change in guard, there will be changes. But people's expectation that things will happen overnight, which does not happen. So Mr. Obama has got a very difficult job to steer the American economy out of this problem, this deep recession. And I think his team is now grossly engaged in getting over this crisis, which I think will happen, but over a period of time.
You have your branches worldwide. How is your bank coping up with this situation?
Although we are a British bank, headquartered in London, but we are Asia-focused bank, basically. Our vision, basically, our strategic mission is like this, that we want to be a leading international bank in Asia, Africa and the Middle East. So our focus is Asia, Africa and the Middle East. Fortunately, these economies, they had gone through this kind of, particularly the Asian economies have gone through Asian crisis in 1997. And these economies had got a very big learning out of this crisis. So they were better monitored, they were better governed. And so the economic, fallout was not as severe as West has witnessed, So that way, I think, Asian economies have done reasonably better than the Western economies. But there are dependencies, like Korea or Taiwan and all that. They are hugely, even China, hugely export-oriented economies. But I think the domestic demand is also good. So bank has, its bank's policy, bank strategy, which helped, and our very conservative lending policy. We have not gone in for this kind of commercial papers, those kind of papers, which other banks have encouraged. Their, funding of those papers. We have not done that. We remain very, very, strong in our lending, very conservative in our lending, managed our portfolio very well. So in most of the countries we have done very well, and we have mostly steered our bank through the crisis very well. But yet the crisis is not yet over, so we need to remain very vigilant, and we need to actually play a cautious role. We need to look at the economies with cautious optimism.
All the South Asian nations hold great economic prospects. How can we explore the possibilities of South Asian cooperation in terms of economy and business?
I think your question is a good question, but I would like to say that there is an established institution which is called SAARC, and SAARC has got the responsibility to do a clear coordination in terms of the economic development of the South Asian countries. And I think SAARC is headquartered here in Nepal, in Kathmandu, and a very senior person is heading as Secretary General of SAARC.
Dr. Silkan Sharma.
Yes, Dr. Sharma. And I think SAARC is doing its job, but it also depends on individual participant countries, to contribute to the understanding and propagating the mutual interests in a very conducive way. And it needs political will. I don't want to elaborate on that, but a political will is very important. Coordination is very important. We need to understand that today, in the age of globalization, we cannot remain isolated. The economies cannot remain isolated, because most of the member countries in SAARC, we are all poor countries. We are developing countries, and with economic cooperation with each other, would definitely help us growing. And there will be mutual growth, there will be mutual understanding. There are a lot of trade opportunities, and there will be far more opportunities being created with this cooperation. I think governments, respective governments, are fully aware of it, but I think political will is very important. Quick change in governments also might delay the whole process.
Indian Congress won the elections consecutively this year. Does this contribute to the stability and economic growth of India?
I think so, because why they have won, there are a lot of political analyses had happened over the last few weeks, and it came out loud and clear that UPA government had done a good job, and that is why they got the mandate back. So it has now posed an additional responsibility on the incumbent government today to ensure that the economic growth continues, and I think that would be great if it happens, because there will be a contagion, positive effect on the neighboring economies, Nepal included. So I'm quite hopeful that it would not only help India, it would help the neighboring countries, including Nepal.
Ministry of External Affairs in India is discussing its neighboring policies right now.
Yes.
Will this also contribute to the regional economic growth as well?
This should form the part of the economic cooperation, because all that we discussed is the economic cooperation and mutual interests. So I think it should. Yes.
We'll continue with our conversation after a short break.
Sure. Thank you.
Do stay with us. Welcome back. You're watching Power Talks. We are in conversation with Mr. Sujit Mundul, the CEO and Director of Standard Chartered Bank, Nepal. Mr. Mundul, India's large population was considered a hindrance to its growth, which in a way turned out to be a boon when the civilians were allowed to invest into the big business houses. How did that work out, and how has that contributed to the economic growth in India?
I think it was fascinating. It is a journey that Indians have undertaken over the last 10-15 years. And it has become very successful in the sense that with the opening of the economy, this had created, huge opportunity for the local public to invest as, not only as joint venture, but also in the stock exchange through mutual funds, and which has contributed to the growth of individual wealth creation, not only the national wealth creation, but also individual wealth creation. And the opening of the economy had created a lot of internal demands. So it's a cycle, and with that cycle, the economy had grown. Let's not talk too far back. About 7, 8 years, 9 years back, year 2000, the growth in the Indian economy was 3 to 4%. Then it reached about 10% over a period of 6-7 years. Which is this not fascinating? So, an increased population, or increasing or growing population at one stage, I very rightly said that that was a huge burden. But today, if you look at the population clusters, you see that the average age is about below 30, 25, 26, which is very young population, and they have become a resource. And same is the case for Nepal. If it becomes an inclusive growth with a lot of FDIs taking place here, this country will change. A magical change will happen. And I don't think this country will take many years, maybe 3-4 years, 5 years. India had taken about 15 to 20 years. But this country is a much smaller size. It can happen in 5 years' time. Could be a sea change, a paradigm shift into the whole process. Yes, I agree with you. Yes, it has become a wealth for the nation as opposed to a burden. Yeah.
Since India becoming a republic in late 1940s, it took India a long time to open up to the international business houses, the multinational companies. What are the lessons that Nepal can learn from this?
Lesson is this, that today world has changed and we need to change with the time. We cannot stay back with a mentality, with a thinking process which is 60 years old. We need to think what the world is thinking today. For that, a paradigm shift is insisted upon, is required, is desired. So we need to open up the economy, and nature has given so much of wealth. That wealth needs to be exploited in a very positive way. And with that exploitation, what I mean that it has got a lot of infrastructural resources, like power, which is a huge resource. Hydropower is a case in point. Tourism is a case in point, which is a natural resource, gift of the God. We need to allow these resources to be exploited in a very positive manner, contributing to the national economy and allowing the investors, maybe domestic, maybe international investors, to reap the benefit, because the world is globalized today. We cannot remain isolated. The more we remain isolated, the more painful it will be for the country. The country is going through pains for so many years. Now it has just become a democratic country. Democracy has set in, and I think over a period of time democracy will mature in a very positive manner, and it will contribute to the economic growth. But I think a political will is required for making this country self-sufficient, which it can become in a very short span of time.
Nepal, even till today, depends largely on the donors' money and foreign aid or foreign loans. What are the advantages and disadvantages that Nepal has in terms of attracting foreign investments?
Nepal has got huge potential, as I mentioned, to attract foreign investment, because it has got untapped potential, huge untapped potential, as I mentioned, for infrastructural sector, mainly in hydropower, tourism, service sector, agriculture sector, value-added items, herbs, fruits, floriculture, what not. But again, you need to have that conducive climate. You need to create that perception outside Nepal that it's a stable country. It has got a stable government. It has got peace. Our investments, whoever is investment, be it domestic, be it international, investment is safe. Policies, conducive policies are there in place, because those policies are important, particularly labor policies. Nobody is going to invest money in a place and buy trouble.
Nepal is still undergoing through a political turmoil, besides putting aside the 10-year-long conflict through the peace process.
Yes.
But we have seen that countries like Sri Lanka, where despite having conflict, they have done pretty well with foreign investments.
Yes.
How can Nepal invite and safeguard FDI, foreign direct investments?
The government has to give very clear signals, not only by words, by demonstrating that there is a stability in this country. There is no danger in this country. If that happens, I think investment should not be a problem. I know there are people who are ready to invest in this beautiful country, in many sectors. But government has to be progressive. Government has to make sure that whoever is investing, even domestic investments are not also happening to the desired extent. I am not saying nothing is happening. Definitely something is happening, but not to the desired extent. So we need to see there is a catalysis. Some catalytic agent is working in a very positive way, and government could be that catalytic agent. Government should allow private sector to invest. Government should invite foreign direct investment into this country by resolving certain ticklish issues, like for a power sector, as for example. There are a lot of social issues which an investor will not be able to resolve. It is for the government to resolve those issues in a very comprehensive manner, so that the investment can come, income is generated, additional employment opportunities are generated, royalty could be agreed upon, all those issues. If 2 or 3 projects can happen in a seamless manner, I think there will be no dearth of investments. But government needs to prove that yes, it is solidly behind the investments, it really wants economic development. That has to be demonstrated. Once that is demonstrated, I don't think there is any problem of foreign direct investment here or domestic investment here. Because we all know that capital flights are happening, even if it is not unknown to the government. Those capital flights will be stopped. That's my feeling.
The trend in Nepal is such that the politicians are short-sighted and the governments are dysfunctional. If this continues to be so for a while, cannot the civilians' initiative trigger that?
Your point is taken, well taken, but thing is that at the end of the day you need government's help in implementing certain things, like laws, like judiciary, because they are the controlling agents. So without that, things will not function. Private sector can come forward, but private sector also needs government, because government is in charge of governance of many things, of everything, basically. So without government, without conducive government or conducive policy and intention, it is very difficult. It does not happen in any country.
We'll continue with our conversation after a short break.
Sure.
Do stay with us. Welcome back. You're watching Power Talks. We are in conversation with Mr. Sujit Mundul, the CEO and Director of Standard Chartered Bank, Nepal. How do you see the performance of Standard Chartered banks in South Asia and especially in Nepal?
Standard Chartered in South Asia has been doing very well despite the economic meltdown. In Nepal, we have been performing very well. The recently concluded financial year, that is 15 July 2009, we have posted a post-tax profit of 102 crores, and which is I think it's quite a landmark for us. And under the given circumstances, with the growth of 3.5% in the economy, and with all these difficulties around, uncertainty, difficulties, lack of confidence, I think it's a very good performance.
People anywhere around the world would like to be ensured of safe investments. Is there a formula or an education or knowledge with which they can secure their investment and avoid losses? Or is it all just luck by chance?
No, it is not luck by chance. I think a lot of education is required, a lot of knowledge is required. And when somebody is investing, somebody has to be told very clearly that these are the pros and cons in this investment. So transparency is very important even in IPOs. And their regulators have to play a very big role. Even media has a very big role to play. Governance and transparency, high level of governance is required. Because it is a developing economy, it needs that discipline is required to make the market educated.
Most of the CEOs and directors of banks and multinationals hold the similar college degree and knowledge, yet they perform differently. To what extent does the creative and positive thinking contribute to business leadership, or is it a distraction from profit?
Leadership is required to get your team or the organization better organized and driven in a direction which ultimately contributes to the bottom line. So it is not distracted or delinked from the bottom line. Focus would be the bottom line, and it depends on the leader, how the leader carries the organization, including people. So it's not divorced. They are very, very complementary to each other.
Is that where your love for Rabindra Sangeet and poetry comes in?
To some extent, yes. This is basically due to the upbringing, and the family also contributed. The kind of environment I was born.
Where do you see the correlation of your work and your creative pursuit?
A leader has to be evolving all the time, which means creativity. So I do not see any conflict in creativity and leadership. It's all linked. It's all here in your mind, and I think that does work.
How do you manage time between the both? Because you have a busy schedule with work.
Yes, that's true. I think it's a question of your will. and intention. If you have the will, you will find a way. If you do not have, excuses will be there. So I do not believe in that. I think it's up to an individual. If individual wants to do something, individual will find time and do it. If the individual doesn't want to do something, there are enough excuses to say that I'm very busy.
What are some of the success stories in Nepal in terms of economic growth and business expansion?
For Standard Chartered,
For your bank?
we have been the highest profit-making bank for the last 7-8 years consecutively, despite all the difficulties. Our shares are quoted around 6,000 rupees, 100 rupee shares. Market cap is about $747 million. Our investment is about $21 million, of which about $20 million during the height of crisis in the country, which is 2005. Height of conflict time, I managed to get that investment out of the group. We picked up 25% share from our partner here, that is Nepal Bank, and that was one of the landmark as a success for Standard Chartered. It was an associate company of Standard Chartered Group. Now it has become a 75% subsidiary of Standard Chartered. Market cap is pretty high, earning per share is pretty spectacular. We have been rewarding our shareholders very well over the last few years, about 130% payout, which 80% by a cash dividend, 50% by a bonus share, and consecutive years we have been doing that. So we have brought many new products, first of its kind in the country, both in wholesale bank and in consumer bank. That way we are the product leader in the market. We are expected to be that, being a foreign bank, multinational bank. And I think, in terms of governance, I think we are pretty strong in that. And we have been recognized by the regulator, that is Nepal Rashtra Bank, many times. And we are very thankful for their recognition of our good systems and high level of governance.
When we talk about global economy, it is said that if there is a bomb blast in a city in Europe, it in a way impacts the stock exchange market in Mumbai. We live in a global village, where also we have a lot of youth unemployment and extremism is on the rise. Cannot the investors also invest in the positive growth of young generation?
Yes.
Even if it is to ensure their own investments?
Yes, I agree with you. It's a global village now, world is flat now, everyone is connected to everyone. And I think yes, but thing is this, that those decisions have to be conscious decisions. Those decisions have to be measured very carefully and have to be ensured that the money goes into the right channel and used. So end use of funds are very important. Giving money to somebody is very easy, but monitoring the use of end use of funds is also very important. So I think to make the whole thing successful, we need commitment from everybody. It's not holistically, the banking system is holistically responsible for this. It's not that. The recipient is also equally responsible. Regulators are responsible. It's a holistic responsibility to make it successful.
Lastly, efforts are being taken around the world to recover from this crisis. How long will it take us to recover and to get the economy back to track?
I think there will be two different time frames for the two major parts of the world. Western economies will take longer time because the damage done to the Western economies by the global meltdown is far more serious compared to the Asian economies. But as we have said that it's a global village today, so there is contagion effect on the Asian economies also. But I think give and take, to my estimation, it's very difficult to predict, but my estimation will take about 3 years from now to see a semblance back to the earlier situation, and from there hopefully a growth phase will start.
Let us hope that with efforts of business leaders like yourself and the civilians around the world, we are able to recover from this crisis and get economy back to track so that we can also achieve the development goals for the cause of a larger population. With this hope, I wish you good luck and goodbye. See you next week, the same time. Thank you for being with us.